Hey everybody, and welcome to the Double Stuff podcast, where we're double the host, double the fun, and double the topics. I'm Alan.
I'm Dan.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Charity.
And guess what? We are going to start today off talking about our favorite singers. Singing. I'm singing.
Cheers is Buddy the Elf.
I love you.
Obviously, my favorite singer-songwriter, Buddy the Elf. Does anybody else have a particular song, writer, singer, performer?
You want to start?
Okay, all eyes are on me.
Favorite's hard.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I feel like we should divide it up into genres, but I will say
Genres, genders, you know. I mean,
Let's put them all in.
I will
it's
say
tough.
the first person that came to mind was Nat King Cole, just because,
yes.
you know, our whole family loves the Christmas album. And like growing up, like no matter where you are, that album just sounds like home. His voice is very soothing, very calming. And like no matter what mood I'm in, if I listen to Nat King Cole, it's just like, all is right with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. I appreciate Nat King Cole as well. His daughter is fantastic.
Family trait, yeah.
Yeah, and my daughters, as much as they like popular music as well, especially now that they're coming into their teenage years, they still have an affinity for, you know, Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, Dean
Yay.
Martin.
Bringing them up right. Yes,
That's how
I
you
knew
want
I
it.
liked those
It's
girls.
timeless. It's just timeless music, you know. But then there's always there's different genres. There's different, you know, emotions that you have that you kind of go to. I would never go to Nat King Cole if I needed to, you know, blow off some steam. I was angry or something like that. I'm not listening to Nat King Cole. How about you, Dan? Do you have any particular favorites?
Maybe Elton John.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I like I like his
Genius.
voice and his
Yeah.
play. And I always thought it was really fascinating he doesn't write his music. Like he just sings it.
Yeah, not only
Yeah.
that, but and I think the Doors were like this too, where Jim Morrison, much like Elton John's partner, I forget his name.
Oh, Elton John's partner? I
Yeah.
know, I'm trying to think of it too. I
I don't have
totally
that
blanking on it, but yeah.
Doesn't matter. Let me. Sorry,
Sorry, Elton
guy
John.
that I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, I think that it's fascinating when you can have somebody that writes a poem, and then you have like an Elton John or the Doors that would take Jim Morrison's poetry, and then all of a sudden now it's a song.
I mean,
David Furnish?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Furnish.
And I was thinking of like Neil Peart wrote a lot of the songs for Rush, but he was like the drummer. So then like
Right.
Eddie Lee was the singer. It's just, I don't know, it's just really interesting. But Elton John, I just think he's got a great presence, like stage for. I mean, I was torn. It was between that and David Bowie.
David
So-
Bowie,
Okay.
classic.
I can see you dressing up as both of them for Halloween.
Yeah, you think so? Well, the Bowie though it depends on what era of Bowie. You know,
Oh,
Bowie's
okay.
got all
Way
his own
back.
characters.
Yeah.
It's his Stardust. I can.
Ziggy Stardust.
Ziggy Stardust,
Was it? No. But his album before Ziggy Stardust, All the Pretty Girls.
Oh, I know you're putting me to the test. And I'm trying to think of what it was.
Doesn't matter. David Bowie, genius as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Sarah?
Well,
I'm just looking forward to whatever old.
Somebody we've never heard of.
I'm kind of.
Fannie McFanners. She got started
that's the
before they
exact
even before anybody could even hear.
Oh my gosh! I'm glad I have that.
They didn't even have records; they were cylinders.
They were. I've actually listened to a few Cylinder records. I have. Oh man!
I was not ready for that. I just got lightheaded. Oh man. Okay, I'm
Okay,
back.
let your blood pressure come back up.
Okay, I'm back.
All right.
Oh man! But kind of like with you.
Sorry. I'm calm.
Kind of like with you and your family, I'm huge on Sinatra,
Yeah.
like Rat Pack, all that stuff. Nat King Cole, like what Charity said. So I mean, but most of the stuff I enjoy is like turn of the century up until maybe the 60s and 70s. I'm
Yeah.
finally starting to work my way to the. Pretty soon the 80s are coming.
So you're about to get in my era of the 70s. That's what I love.
Sure.
So.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of 60s and 70s music. Now, predominantly the stuff I enjoy is stuff from like, I do like the Grand Hall and Victorian music, and I really do like stuff from the 20s. Like I do like Ruth Etting. She had a really beautiful voice. And because I listen to a lot of like quartets and stuff, you know, some of them are not just necessarily just solo artists. A lot of them are like quartets or duos or something like that. So I won't
Well, that's
bother
interesting
with,
too. Is it in opening up the topic? We're talking about favorite singers, but limiting it to just a singer
Like just one
songwriter or
person.
something, rather than an act. Because if
that's
we
true.
open it up
That's
to
a
an
big
act,
one.
man, that gets even bigger.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, it'd probably be a toss up between like Andy Williams, which is kind of like the same way I feel about Nat King Cole, very soothing.
Let me ask you this: have you ever heard Seth MacFarlane sing?
He has a beautiful voice.
It sounds exactly like Andy Williams.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he's a great singer.
He
I
is.
kind of prefer him as a singer than
Everything else.
everything else.
A little too salty for you.
I like salt, but sometimes a little too much sodium can go a long way.
Back on your sodium. Yeah.
But yeah, he's got an amazing voice, and I do appreciate the modern crooners, but you know I am partial to the originals. But yeah, so I do like Bing Crosby with that bassy voice, you know. So I don't know if I have a favorite. I used to say I did, but I don't know if I do anymore. But it would be a toss up between probably Bing Crosby and Andy Williams.
Okay.
I like their style, and I'm partial, but I do personally think that men back then sang better than women. I kind of like their vocal tone. I like their cadence.
Whoa.
I like their, you know, I just maybe just I
They
like,
all sounded like the Betty Boop, like very like
yeah. If you,
high pitch.
I mean, the 20s did have a very specific style of singing.
Well, and that's it too. I mean, is it the style of singing? Because then you can have somebody that has vocal inflections that that separate them from some, you know, totally different, like Jimmy Durante from
Jimmy Durante.
you know, Louis Armstrong. You know, there's
Yeah.
nobody else that sounds like
It's
them.
very distinctive.
Yeah. So that's kind of a calling card. Whereas now, I don't know if it's more about the material, it's more about the production, the you know.
I think a lot of it is the writing too, you know, because I can put Fred Astaire in that category because if you just listen to like we're talking about songwriters, like you know Gershwin,
Yeah.
you know, beautiful songs. Someday
that's
when I'm
true,
awfully
too.
low,
And
when the
not
world
o-
is low,
Yeah,
you
and,
know.
there's I forget the DJ or the producer. He has like a YouTube channel, but basically they're using AI or somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
they
there
take,
I
like-
ruined it. Is
they-
it them?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're right because they take like Hank Williams and then they put him over like Ice Cube or something. and it
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
he's.
It's
Yeah.
a really, but
Yeah.
it weirdly works.
Well,
it's
yeah.
so odd, but it
Yeah.
works.
Well, the one I saw was Johnny Cash singing Barbie Girl.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was really
There you go.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm a Barbie girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. That works. Yeah.
Yeah,
they do
it only
Elvis.
works, but it does. Yeah, it's a juxtaposition, but maybe that's why it's a way to kind of reintroduce the classics with I guess pop culture, so you're able to introduce that to new audiences. So in that case, I think that's cool. But I just like the pure stuff, I guess.
Okay. Well, and we talked about Elton John, David Bowie, somebody that can effectively and gracefully, every decade be
Yeah.
relevant,
Oh, yeah.
or something like that. But is there somebody that like jumps out, like let's pick the 80s. Is there somebody that just jumps out as like your singer that represents the 1980s?
Michael Jackson.
Oh,
I mean, that's-
I was
bingo.
gonna go Journey, but Michael Jackson works too.
Yeah.
But Journey was the first one that came to my mind.
Journey.
Journey's
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
I mean, so like Michael Jackson isn't my favorite singer from the 80s. He's just
Yeah.
when it comes
The
to 80s music, that's
quintessential.
what I think about,
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
And I'm not a big Michael Jackson fan. Like I
Same.
would prefer Jackson 5.
I do like Jackson 5.
Yeah,
So
I
again,
like
back in the
that
70s.
style.
I say I'm not a big Michael Jackson fan, but then every time I hear a Michael Jackson song, I'm just like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
What about the 90s? Does anybody have a
I'm
voice
trying
of the 90s?
All I think of is like boy bands,
Okay.
which I think NSYNC's getting back together, right? And
are they?
touring
Probably.
again?
I've heard Backstreet Boys doing like Tide commercials. So
yeah. Tell me why.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it sticks. Tell me why. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think the 90s is so split up between the first half of the 90s and the second half of the 90s. So, like, I think of Nirvana.
You got grunge. in
Yeah, I
there.
got like,
I was
and
gonna
then
say, yeah,
you
that's
got like a
more-
lot of the pop like boy bands, and
And
then
you also have like the die off of sort of like the metal era. Like there was like a
Yeah.
lull. Now it's ramped
Oh, yeah.
all the way back up. But
absolutely, but
yeah.
that's my voice for the 90s is probably Nirvana.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
See, I don't have much to contribute to that. So
You don't
I'm
have
just-
anybody from the 90s?
I mean, I'm aware of who.
Are we gonna go back to Fannie McFanners again?
How about
not somebody that you like,
Celine
just somebody that
Dion?
you think of.
Oh, like Britney
Right.
Spears.
Yeah, like
I guess?
Britney
Britney
Spears,
Spears.
99. That was
Yeah.
her big album.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Sarah knows somebody. I mean, I know it was around 99, 2000. I know a lot of the people I knew were really into the Spice Girls.
Yeah, Spice
Yeah.
Girls are huge.
You know, so it's
Yeah.
not like I don't know who people are. It's just the fact that it's not like it's not like I can just sing along to all
Yeah.
their songs.
Okay.
No, not a Smashing Pumpkins fan then?
I've never smashed a pumpkin.
No Ace of Base. You never saw the sign.
And there's some songs where I'm like, oh, it's that. So that shows my ignorance. I'm like,
Right.
I heard part of that 20 years ago. You know,
Well,
it's
in
just
the
like that
90s,
thing,
it also
yeah.
started. You got sort of more of an electronic presence that really pushed up and like popped up in like the 2000s. Right in the new millennium.
See,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking. I feel like a lot of songs that I would associate would be more 2000s and not
Yeah,
90s.
more dance house.
And see, that's where I
Kinda
get
stuff.
lost. Because when you talk
Yeah.
about the 2000s, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, the 2000s. I was listening to either like pop punk, but it was mostly I was listening to 90s music into the 2000s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because like in the 90s, I really can't, because I was still a little kid. So I really
Yeah.
didn't listen to that type of stuff. I mean, once I became a teenager, that was more 2000s. So I guess I can identify stuff a little bit more with that. But then again, I'm me, and I'm the exception to so many rules. You know, I mean, the little bit I do remember, I realized this because I was looking at a video, is that I think the 90s, I don't know if it was early or mid, they had a little bit of a swing revival.
Yeah, Brian Seltzer.
Yeah, it kind of brought back, and that's because at the time it had only been 50 years since the 40s.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were
Ska
bringing
music.
back.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Squirrel
yeah.
Nut
I could
Zippers.
never-
Yeah, Mighty Mighty Boston,
Yeah,
Mighty Mighty Boston.
Voodoo
Not
Glow
my
Skulls.
favorite. I
Oh,
never-
I love it.
Bats.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I guess I kind of remember, which I realize now, I remember getting into swing music at that age.
Yeah.
Listening to some of that. And so maybe that was one of the things that kind of got me into listening to like the original stuff, like Glenn
Yeah.
Miller and everything.
Well, and
So-
I think what year did Swingers come out? With Vince
Swingers
Vaughn
with Vince Vaughn, and that would have been after 95.
Yeah.
Maybe just after 95. Oh.
Okay.
I think people were ready for a little bit of fun because
Yeah.
there like early night there was a lot of
No, that was definitely a throwback at that
just
time.
a lot of
for sure.
depression, a lot of like, there's no meaning to life or something like
Well,
that.
that's why I understood the 40s. They got out of the depression too.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think that was why, because at that time it was been half a century, and we always like to go back 50 years. That's why the 70s are still big, because it's been 50 years.
Sure.
So we seem to really enjoy our half century marks.
Well, we have that that psychological
like a nostalgia, like a
nostalgia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was a clinical, like that was I believe nostalgia was something that like clinicians would diagnose people with
the good old days.
the good old days, because obviously they weren't
There's
but
no
you,
such thing as the good old days.
all you think about are the positives. You don't think about any of the flaws. We've talked about it before. Like, I'd like to go back. I think
Yeah.
perhaps you said it in a previous episode.
Going back to like the
60s without all the racism and stuff.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's nostalgia. Yeah.
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 Well, because as a kid, you're going back to your childhood. So when you're a kid, you didn't, or at least most kids
Right.
didn't deal with that stuff. It was just the innocence, playing outside with friends, and it's just you remember the childhood good
Is
stuff.
that a Midnight in Paris?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Midnight in
Where-
Paris.
yeah.
I love that movie.
I need to
That's a
rewatch.
good
It's been a
one.
while. That's a good one.
Yep.
Yeah. So who knows if someone ever actually does invent a time machine?
We'd already know about it.
That's true. we can sort out. Be like, let's enjoy this without that. Oh. Oh, perfect.
There was one band. Again, I think we've moved out of singer-songwriter. So now that we're into bands, there was one that I would follow every release, and it was Radiohead.
Oh,
so
nice.
all the way from the Bends to OK Computer and beyond, I was just a Radiohead fan. They
nice.
just had such a unique sound that you couldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then going from then, it was Weezer.
Oh, I love
So
Weezer.
I went from Radiohead into Weezer.
Do you know Radiohead was supposed to do the James Bond theme song for Spectre?
What?
Really?
The one that Sam Smith ended up doing?
All of Radiohead or just Tom York?
No, apparently all of Radiohead,
Oh.
as far as I know. But they actually
interesting.
wrote a song, and they made it for the movie, and then it got rejected.
Really?
But I'll have to look it up
It's
and see
too
which one it
weird.
is. But it was really
Some of
good.
it's
But it was
pretty
just kind of
weird, yeah.
dark, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a dark movie. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you guys
Wow.
have like a group that you didn't just like one album you liked, you kept following? Because usually, like with a studio album release or something like that, you're going to have a sound, and then the problem is, whereas like with another type of performance, or almost every other type of performance, like you want something different, you know. But with music, it's a little bit weird because you want new music, but you want it just the way that it was when I found out, because it represents like the emotions that I was feeling that time of life,
Yeah.
the nostalgia effect.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me of AFI, which
Okay.
is like kind of a pop punk band or a punk band from like
Sure.
the 90s. But every couple albums, they would just reinvent their genre almost completely.
Okay.
Oh,
So
wow.
now they sound in the 90s it was like very hard, like punk screaming, and then in the late 90s into the early 2000s they got into like gothic metal.
Oh wow.
Right,
Okay.
so and it was like much more melodic and everything, and then they kind of ran with that for a little bit, and now they do like 80s, like wave, like new wave style music. It's
Interesting.
so weird. So it's like one of those
Wow.
things where it's like I like very specific parts of
Yeah.
that, but then I'm like, no, I don't need
Yeah.
that. That doesn't sound good to me.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Wow.
where you have like the Clash, you know, or some. I only want to hear one version of the Clash, and it's in a 1 and a 2,
Yeah.
and let's get going, you know.
Yeah. I did
Or-
follow some bands like you were saying though with like every album release,
Okay.
like
What do you-
Him, which was a Finnish band. They were really big around the time of like Bam Margera and Jackass and like the skateboard community.
Interesting, okay.
And they did like I went to their concerts. I bought all their albums, like all the deluxe edition stuff.
Okay.
So there was actually two. There was them and there was Coheed and Cambria.
Okay.
And Coheed and Cambria does stories. They do concept albums.
Okay.
And all of their albums up to a certain point told one big story. So they're all chapters in like a big sci-fi
I
epic.
love that.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it off camera about how Pink Floyd did that
Yep.
with Dark Side of the Moon.
did,
And
yeah.
it's just you hit play,
Yep.
and it's the entire album
Yep.
is 2 hours that it just flows together.
Oh, yeah.
I think a couple
seamlessly.
radio stations have done that. Some classic rock stations are
Yeah.
like for Labor Day
Rebranded
weekend or
it.
something,
Oh.
they'll play the
Played the whole
Pink
album?
Floyd
I don't know if
Yeah.
they're
Oh.
allowed to anymore. Well, I'm just wondering because so many of them are just corporate ran. They're just basically they own a tower and then they just
Right.
receive it from Chicago or New York or something. But yeah, that
That would be cool though. I love concept albums like Rush's 2112.
Yeah.
At least the first side of it is all concept album. So
yeah.
they're just fun.
See, with us talking about like music and stuff, I feel like we need to re-record or at least do a new episode of us talking about our desert island discs.
Oh yeah.
Because when we did that, it's been almost 2 years. Because I remember when Dan was talking about, you said Him? Was that the
Him,
group?
yep.
Yeah, because he mentioned that on that episode. The Adventures
Okay.
of Dan Stroganoff, in case you guys want to know the episode. But we were doing our desert island disc, and we had to pick like our top 10 or top
And that
8
was a
favorite.
tough one. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
all of us were like, yeah, at first it seems like it's going to be
Yeah.
no problem. And
Uh-huh.
then as you're writing and once you hit like the 7th slot and you only have 3 left, you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. What's good? Yeah.
My problem is with any of that stuff, like when we're talking about like, well, who's your favorite musician and stuff like that, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, my mind goes blank, and I'm just like, have I
Yeah.
ever listened to music? I cannot think of a single artist.
I've done that in an interview once. Someone asked me, like, who's your favorite director?
Right.
And I was like,
It's like, what's a movie?
I I was like, I don't really have one. And in my head, I was thinking like television directors.
Yeah, I would have thought that too.
Like newscast directors? I don't know any of them.
Yeah, and they're like, you don't have any favorite directors? And I was like, not really, not that I can think of. And then afterwards I was like, Alan, you dummy, they're probably talking about movies. Either that or you could have just said you're Wes Anderson and then see where it goes.
Spielberg. I mean, that's just different.
Spielberg, yeah.
It's an easy one.
I feel like I've done that too. Even with this whole conversation, you're asking me because I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's like those icebreaker questions at work
Yeah.
where they're like, we're going to sit in a circle and introduce ourselves and say one interesting thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never done anything with my life.
We did that at our last retreat.
Okay.
And but it was a different question for everybody, and they came around to me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sweating." And they're like, "What was your favorite course in school, like in high school?" I was like, "That's easy. There's a limited number. I just have to choose one. It doesn't even matter."
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, "Thank you for giving me one of those." And I didn't have to think
Cursive
about it.
writing.
Home economics.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I guess it shows we have an interesting musical bent. I think, I know Alan and Dan seem to have stuff in common.
Well, it's a risky question because
Yeah.
everybody knows that just performing arts and music, it's necessary for a meaningful life. You have to have music in your life.
Yeah.
And it's a risk to put it out there knowing the plethora of genres that are
Yeah.
available, and you're like, what if I reveal too much about myself to somebody that I don't know all that much?
Yeah.
Or what if they reveal something about themselves and I'm like, I don't want to, that I don't know what that is, and I don't care to know more about it, you know?
Yeah, that's like me.
It's
You ever heard of
risky.
cylindrical records?
Yeah.
Well, here, let me show you. I'm a riot at parties. I guess we've gotten to the end already, gosh.
Yeah, we just focused on one, and that's okay. That's all right. Sarah, tell them where we can, if they want another topic or two or three or four, where they can listen to one.
I was going to try to sing it out. I'm like, no. We'll just sing everything out. So, yeah, guys, just listen. We have like 170-something episodes, so you have no excuse. You have to binge listen to all of our episodes. We're available on all the different podcast platforms. Also, check us out on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and, of course, our YouTube channel at Double Stuff Podcast. And, of course, on Twitter, X, at Double Stuff P, and that's the letter P.
I was waiting for you to like just.